Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here, and many of you in the recent video we put out where we talk about which eidolons of every single character to get, you guys really liked that video and you have requested for this one. We're going to be talking about the limited 5-star Lightcones. Who do I think is very, very good to pair together with their Lightcone? Who do I think is you can skip it if you wanted to? But the interesting thing about Lightcones versus eidolons, some of you are wondering, isn't it the same thing? The choice is very clear, right? You either choose the eidolon or you choose, for example, the Lightcone. But that is not the case, because the eidolon, if you think about it, is stuck to a character. If I buy Ruan May's E6, it's stuck to her. I cannot shift it out no matter what if I switch her out. But the Lightcone is a completely different story, which means there's a double value of Lightcones compared to eidolons. Eidolons can be very good for the user, or it could also be very good for other people in the game, other characters as well. And that's where I want to start off first, now that I teased you a little bit. I think the best Lightcone that surprised me the most is patience is all you need. We're talking about Lightcone, we're not talking about Kafka herself. First things first, double layer, right? We are talking about how versatile it is and how good it is on the character itself. So of course we know is the character's best in slot, it works very well, but what makes this so valuable is its ability to proc an additional DOT source, and this DOT source is also counted as a debuff, which is very synonymous with, if you think about Nihility, is basically what the whole class does. You want to land debuffs on enemies, you get stronger by landing debuffs. Some characters even want to land the debuffs, and you're able to basically create team compositions because of this singular Lightcone. In my opinion, this Lightcone is a character on its own. It's like Kafka's embodiment, so to speak. You can put it on Pella, she becomes a DOT character. You put it on whoever not, you can definitely benefit from the speed that you get. The damage increase is just universal. This is ridiculously versatile. I think this is probably my top pick. If you were to have no idea what Lightcone to pick, this is probably one that I think that I hold very strongly. I got it by chance. I wanted to skip it as well, but surprise, surprise, Black Swan, who knows, maybe Acheron and other characters coming to the game could use something like this as well. It's super versatile. Will not be best in slot, but it will be very usable by all. And one of the things that you know is the only Lightcone, other than maybe one preservation one, that has a DOT proc on its own. So, and this is lightning DOT, which means your physical character can do lightning damage as well. Ridiculous. It's so cool. So that is the first one that I want to talk about. And since we are on this screen of Nihility, I was thinking, yeah, let's just go ahead and continue on with the other two on the list, which I think are strong Lightcones, but I don't think it's as good as, for example, the other one. So Incessant Rain, this is Silverwolf's Lightcone. Effect hit rate 24% is okay, and when the wearer has damage, when deals damage to an enemy that has 3 or more debuffs, increase the wearer's crit rate by 12%, blah blah blah. The reason why I don't really like this Lightcone, you can kind of tell by my tone already. It is a good Lightcone. You have 5-star stat scaling, you help Silverwolf do more damage, you give her the stats that she needs, effect hit rate, you give her some ability to land more damage, crit, and some sort of Aether code. But if you think about it, it doesn't really change the character's playstyle. Can you get effect hit rate from other sources? Yes, I would say you can get it from a lot of the 4-star Lightcones. I'm just clicking randomly, but I'm sure one of them has effect hit rate here. Yeah, which is the Eyes of the Prey. One of them I remember had a very huge amount of effect hit rate, and that's Eyes of Prey. You got 40% here already. So you don't really get anything new with Incessant Rain. The only real thing of value, in my opinion, is the ability to get crit rate, because Nihility Lightcones hardly have crit rate in them so far. And this Aether code addition of 12% enhanced damage. It's like a debuff. It can be it's a damage increase debuff, which is interesting, but I think it doesn't really change too much of a playstyle, because, for example, you can get by with a combination of Resolution Shines of Pearls of Sweat, which is kind of like a damage amp, right? Reducing enemy defense. And if you can get it in a 4-star, I would say they are kind of free-ish. Eventually, you will get them if you play long enough, unless you're super unlucky. But a 4-star versus a 5-star where you have to actually spend so much money for, I think Silverwolf is probably a 3 out of 5. If you guys want a rating system, I'll say Kafka's Lightcone's 5 out of 5. Silverwolf Lightcone's a 3 out of 5. And maybe we'll do that rating for the rest of this video as well. I think it's a pretty good catch. Reforged Remembrance, Black Swans. I was thinking quite a while to get this. The design, if you ask me, is a 10 out of 10. 10 out of 5 even. Super great design. I really love how her hand just forms around her entire image over here. But effect hit rate 40%. I don't really care too much about that. When the wearer has procs all of these, you are able to get like additional damage and effect defense ignore, which is great. Like it enhances like her damage. If you want to use Black Swan for a long period of time, I think it's very, very strong. But the reason why I didn't go for it is, firstly, I don't think Black Swan is like a super versatile character compared to the likes of Kafka. So I don't think I'll be playing her in equally as many teams as Kafka. That's one. Secondly, is this Lightcone is not as versatile as Kafka's Lightcone. So the two combined together makes it a very difficult point for me to pitch. I think it's strong. All these signature Lightcones are their best in slots by no means. But don't forget, you're giving up a lot of resources just to get one of these rather than like a god tier Eidolon, a new character and stuff. One reason why I didn't really care too much is there was this new Lightcone that just came out. It's Showtime. You can get this at E5, which increases damage and you give you, for example, a certain amount of attack, which is already good enough. You don't need her to like one-shot enemies because DOT generally is like a long process. So I think it's probably fine. But that is just my personal opinion. They are all strong Lightcones, just versatility does make a difference too. And in the Nihility class, there are so many good 4-star Lightcones, which is why like, it's very difficult to rate Nihility Lightcones higher. I'll probably rate Black Swan as a 2.5 out of 5, dragged down by the versatility of this Lightcone. It's not easy to get all of these stacks unless you really like. You have to build a team around this Lightcone rather than this Lightcone building around a team, or what Kafka's Lightcone like kind of creates a team. And Nihility is a Lightcone class that is very competitive because you have this God tier 1, Good Night and Sleep Well, which gives so much damage buff. You have Resolution Shines of Pearl of Sweat, which gives so much defense shredding. Any character can be a defense shredder. You have It's Showtime, which is a free Lightcone that has damage increase and attack increase already. You have free Lightcones like Fermata, It's Showtime here, and even if any of you who played way back, you get before the tutorial mission start and one of the event Lightcones, you get this which gives you effect hit rate and also additional energy when you attack, defense, reduce enemies, which benefits both Black Swan and Silver Wolf. So it's like hard to justify, right? To spend the amount of money. Solitary healing is also not too bad because you also get quite a bit of energy restoration. So yeah, that is my thoughts on the whole Nihility class at large. And let's go on to the next one. I think at this point probably more people will be more excited about the Harmony Lightcone since it's like Sparkle's banner. I'm going to talk a bit about that, and it's also a really short one because there's two. This is another category that is very competitive. The 4 stars are super good. You have Dance, and why I'm talking about alternatives is because that's the main consideration. Lightcones can be swapped around, but Eidolons you can't. That's why you need to know your closest competition and what are your alternatives. If you couldn't move Lightcones around, then yeah, it's a lot easier to say like Eidolons and stuff. But here, the two is really Past Self in the Mirror and Earthly Escapade. I don't think Past Self in the Mirror on its own is a very good Lightcone. If you're talking about versatility, this one is absolutely like, I would say it's like trash tier in terms of versatility other than for Ruan. So increases the wearer's break fight by 60%. Not many characters use this, probably Asta is the only one right now in the game. When the wearer uses out, you increase allies damage by 24%. Okay, this is quite nice, 24% damage buff, but it's like kind of meh compared to the other free ones also. Should the wearer's break effect exceed a certain amount, you get 1 skill point whenever you use your out. This is probably the best, but it requires you to build like weird characters very high in terms of break effect, which is quite inefficient if you talk about like character building. So this is a free skill point. The best part of this Lightcone is basically it helps you generate skill points when you use your out, helping your Harmony characters become more skill point positive. I think that's like the true selling point of this Lightcone if you want to talk about versatility, but the break effect is a very huge negative. In my opinion, other than for example say Esther. And the last effect here is like once every start of each wave 10 energy. I don't think it's like super great, especially if you're doing like pure fiction stuff. There's only how many waves? 3-4 waves, so you don't really get like like the memory of chaos. There's only like 3 waves, then you don't really get too much value out of it in terms of this part over here. So the reason why I put this Lightcone, and I'm just going to share with you like my own personal bias, and feel free if you guys want to add in any inputs. I always like to see how other people think as well. I think that's the beauty about being a community, is you get to like see what like-minded people think as well. There's no one way that is the perfect way. I'm just sharing with you very openly and transparently my thought process also so that you guys can pick apart or appreciate either one. But why I picked Past Self in the Mirror is not because of how good the Lightcone is, but it's how good Ruan is. Ruan is a very strong character on her own, able to buff like many different teams. And the problem with Ruan is that she doesn't really have too many Lightcones able to be played for her. The one that is like good enough is like Memories of the Past, but this is not easy to get at Super Imposition 5. And some people will argue that S1 of the signature is actually easier to get and like S5 of a 4-star limited Lightcone. This is good, but not that great also. You give a 3-turn rotation, but this gives you that skill points for a bit more flexibility as well, plus a massive amount of damage buff, and helps you hit the thresholds very, very quickly too. I think Past Self in the Mirror is put up because of Runmei. I will give this Lightcone probably like a 2 out of 5 if you don't have Runmei. If you have Runmei, I think I'll push it up to like a 3.5 out of a 5. I don't think it's anywhere near the top like Kafka's Lightcone, but still pretty decent. Just because there's so many other good options in the 4-star category. You have Planetary Rendezvous, free-ish with damage buff. You have Dance, whole allies push. You have Memories of the Past, which is basically enough for Runmei at high super imposition. This is like the worst-ish, because it's only after you use your skill. It's like a weaker version of Bronya. Carve the Moon, Weave the Cloud is decent as well. You get a lot of buffing also here. But Bronya's Lightcone is like pretty competitive because she's the outstanding character in the Harmony character before the new 2 5-star limiteds came out. So energy regen is like so good already. It's hard to justify like shifting any of your current Lightcones away from Bronya instead of just letting her use this instead. So next I want to talk about is Earthly Escapade. This is on the banner right now, and you guys kind of already can get the drift of how I rank stuff. Crit damage, Harmony characters don't care about this unless you're Bronya or Sparkle, but if you're Bronya, this second part is actually pretty difficult to get because you need to gain okay, so it gives a lot of like crit damage, crit rate buffing, but in order to keep the uptime on the buff, this second part of the buff, which is the massive part, which is like 10% crit rate, 28% crit damage, that's like 48%. It's like more than the base stats alone to buff your whole team. You need to actually gain skill points. Bronya, if you realize, doesn't gain too much skill points, so the only character really that truly uses all of these stats is Sparkle, which means it's not very versatile. The 10% 28 crit damage is okay, I guess. It's like so-so if you were running maybe Hanya or something. But to put $150, depending on how unlucky you are, lucky you are, just for this crit damage buffing, I don't know whether it's justifiable. You can find a lot of these like crit stats in, for example, Eidolon 1 and Eidolon 2 of a lot of meta support characters already. And do you really need that additional resource? I don't know. That's to each his own. On its own, this is a very strong Lightcone. I think it's a very strong will Lightcone. If you are looking for the biggest PP damage, you need this for showcase. So I would rate this Lightcone at a 3 out of a 5, just for the fact that I still see it being best in class for will showcases to do very massive damage. So that is like my Harmony thought process. You don't need the signature Lightcones. It's just nice to have. To me, if I were free to play, easy skip on this too. That's why I rate it like 3.5-ish out of 5. Nothing super critical. Where I think, let's like juxtapose it from like Nihility, Harmony, which have very good competition, to something that doesn't have very good competition here. And that is the Erudition class. The 4 stars are absolutely trash. Previously, before the new one, the day the Cosmo Fells came out, the best one arguably is the Battle Pass one, because if you have it at max level, this is like a 0.4 per point of energy up to 160. My math brain is not working today, but I think that's like 56, 52, somewhere around there. Damage increase if you have 160 energy, which is the best out of all of them. It's very generic, very good. But then again, it's 5 battle passes. That's like how much? $70 or $50 around there. Not very cheap, and you're nowhere near free to play. The second one probably it's Genius Repose. Some people would argue that this got a lot better with now with the Pure Fiction event, because you can actually defeat a lot more enemies. If you have it at high super imposition, you get a massive amount of crit damage, 48 crit damage % here, and you just need to defeat the enemy. If you are Erudition in for example playing the Pure Fiction, you're definitely proccing this more often than not. I think Genius Repose is like super strong now that the game is coming about. The day the Cosmo Fails is also okay. You get this is a free Lightcone. You can get it all the way up to S5. So when you are attacking enemies with the same weakness, for example, you are bringing Himiko into a fire weakness or Herta into fire weakness and blah blah blah, you'll be fighting into their weakness anyway, and you get a nice 40% crit damage increase. Very strong. So before we had like the day the Cosmos Fell, Pure Fiction, before Dawn was absolutely god tier. Why was he god tier? Because there's nothing, if you saw, nothing that this is a flat 36% crit damage increase. Without conditions, absolutely nothing needed. You hit 1 enemy or 5 enemies, you get this anyway. Ibas Skill Ultimate, which all Erudition characters benefit from. The only thing that's a bit more niche is this massive follow-up attack damage of 48%. If you are a whale, this scales up even nicely to like 80%, 60 and 30. Very ridiculous numbers, but not all of us are whales. Nowadays, I think you can get by. This 36% crit damage is no longer as wow as it used to be, especially with Pure Fiction coming to the game and Genius Repose actually making up a lot for it. If you have Genius Repose at higher superimposition, you should probably think about it. This is a 48% crit damage. Given that you probably won't be playing Erudition everywhere, you probably will only be fixing on one. I think it's a pretty good investment, saving yourself some money as well for Before Dawn on the banner. But if you are Jing Yuan main, or you are a follow-up attacker in future maybe that uses every single stat, this is very, very strong. The gap between this Lightcone for Jing Yuan versus like other signatures for other characters, I think back in 1.0 this was like the most impressive. Right now, still very strong, but the question is Jing Yuan going to be as versatile? He's now getting better in the meta, as we mentioned on our video. Is he still worth it? Check it out if you haven't. But then again, I can't give this a low rating. I'll say Before Dawn is like a 4.5, just based on history and how well it's done. No real competition that came up that competes with it very strongly, and still a decent enough Lightcone. Very similar, I would say that any of you who are just like watching this part, just joining in, this Lightcone is very similar to Jing Yuan's Lightcone. You trade off the follow-up attack portion of being like super good for Jing Yuan to be a bit more versatile, where you have a max damage increase of the ultimate based on your ultimate energy. So of course Argenti benefits from it the most. He scales all the way up to like 180 energy, but still this can be used for a lot of Lightcones. So I would say, my honest opinion, I'll rank an instance before a gaze. If you're planning to use it for your whole roster, like thinking of like moving this Lightcone around, this is probably my top pick for Erudition Lightcones. It's very strong for Argenti as well, but as mentioned, you don't really need this Lightcone because you have decent alternatives now in the Pure Fiction game mode, such as Genius Repose. I think it's strong. Day Cosmos Fell is also pretty good, and today is another peaceful day. Of course, if you have a better pass, Lightcone is very strong. So these two I'll rate about the same, maybe 4.5, both of them. I would say one is better for versatility, one is better for Jing Yuan just popping off like a madman. Knight of Milky Way is not very great. I wouldn't say like this is super good. You get a lot of attack percentage, which means that it allows you to play a lot of other type of buffers, like defense shredders, damage buffing kind of units, not attack buffing. But Estar gives a lot of attack percentage, very easy to get, which is why for generally a free-to-play, attack percentage is not too difficult to find. You only benefit from the massive stats of this Lightcone that most of you will be playing, especially if you don't have these two. So my judgment of the Erudition class, the difference between the two signature Lightcones is so much greater than any other Lightcone in the game. The gap is like, in my opinion, like the biggest here in this category. The only reason I'm saying that right now is we do not have an Erudition 5-star free Lightcone from the Herta shop right now, from the Simulated Universe. Once that comes about, this category will change. So if you are worried about risk in the future, that's one thing to consider. Other than that, I think if you play any of these characters, you like them a lot, you won't really go wrong with either of them. I think you can get really strong class here. 4.5 probably will be my highest rating, I guess, for most of them. So now that we have like finished the Erudition, naturally we are left with how many more? We are left with 4. So we are left with 2 defensive, 2 offensive. Let's take a chill pill and go into a defensive one now. Let's talk about Abundance here. Abundance is another class, another category of Lightcones with a lot of options. As you guys can see, I didn't pull for them, and I will also like share with you why. Why I didn't pull for Erudition, if any of you are wondering, is because I don't really use these two characters a lot. If I love Jing Yuan so much more, I would probably pull his signature as well. Argenti, I think, is just really strong in the Pure Fiction, but I prefer characters that can be played in a lot of places. I generally like versatility quite a lot as a person, as a gamer. So, 2 Lightcones, Echoes of the Coffin and Night of Fright. The thing you must understand about the Abundance Lightcone is you don't really need the stats that they provide. The 5-star stats is kind of useless because they have already a lot of HP for most of them, other than maybe some new characters that are coming out. Most of them are very chunky already. They mostly scale with HP. The only one that doesn't scale with HP is Luocha. And Luocha can get away with this Lightcone over here, Time Waits for No One, because he scales with attack. So this HP stat actually does benefit him a bit. So that's like the only current one that I think is going to suffer in the abundance category. In future, there might be other attack scaling characters that might suffer as well. But for now, abundance Lightcones don't really make sense because you have a lot of huge stats that is largely wasted. Overheal doesn't do more damage, so giving them even more stats doesn't really matter if you're not utilizing the HP stat pool, the attack stat pool properly as well. So that is why I don't really rank defensive Lightcones very high, and more often than not, I focus on what the effects do. So here you can see Luocha's Lightcone increases attack by 40%. Yeah, it's nice, wow, a lot of attack, but this doesn't really translate into anything. He does have one of the highest attack in the game, granted, so he does get a lot from percentage bonus, but it just translates into heals. For now, I don't think that we have enough HP to sustain a one-shot anyway, and he probably can heal you up like one good time if you already have a decent enough build on him. So whenever the wearer uses an attack, for each enemy target hits, regenerate some energy, good amounts of refund for him. Doesn't really do too much. His ult doesn't really like massively impact the game. It removes one buff one time from each of the enemies, AoE cleanse, or AoE strip one buff, but that's about it. So more energy, okay, it's nice, but I don't see it's a game changer or anything. Each attack can regenerate up to 3 times this way, so 3 enemies limit. After the wearer uses the ultimate, all allies gain speed for 20, speed for 1 turn. Not that great. It sounds very nice. Like, it's a very general Lightcone that gives a lot of stuff that you need. But if you think about it, this actually doesn't really justify $100. Like, would you rather this or say a Danheng Imbibitor Lunae's E2? I don't know. I wouldn't even go for this. I think Luocha is a character that his Eidolons are way better than his signature Lightcone. That's why I like straight away skip this. I just gave him like time waits for no one to get the HP stats much higher. So that he's a bit more survivable, and pretty much is like good to go. I don't even feel any downside. No regrets at all skipping this Lightcone. I'll rate Echoes of a Coffin 1 out of 5. I just don't think it's very good considering the rest of them, how good they are for Luocha in my opinion. And it's an attack scaling Lightcone also, so not everyone can use it. You must understand that the other Lightcones here are very strong. Shared Feeling is good, especially if you're trying to battery run me from an outside position. Some of you are having troubles doing a 3-turn rotation. Shared Feeling gives you that 2 here, energy that you throw onto a random teammate. You have other ways of throwing the energy, like Quid Pro Quo also throws energy to your teammates, which is a very good funneling strategy. Allows your sustain to do a lot more than just heal, so it becomes like pseudo offensive too. So that's what I like. Post-op conversation here is just like more heals, which is decent enough if you're looking for the uptime. Warm shortens the cold nights. I think this is one of the worst battle pass. I think it's a battle pass Lightcone, one of the worst ones actually. Is 2% of their respective max HP. If it was 2% of the wearer's max HP, I would say it's a lot better. But yeah, you don't really need this much if you're running most characters, unless of course your abundance character is not healing enough in future. Maybe we have an abundance character that somehow doesn't heal a lot, then maybe this might come more into the mix. But it's a battle pass Lightcone, so I don't think they will build the game around it. This one's a new one too. What is real? Probably going to be a Gallagher Lightcone. It's free as well. So when you use your basic attack, you heal a little bit for the wearer. So makes up for a squishy character that scales off with break effect, I guess. A little bit. That's my thoughts. So last one, of course, we want to talk about is Night of Fright. We're spending a bit of more time here because I want to just try to dissuade you guys as much as I can from pulling the abundance Lightcones. Now, I'm just joking. If you guys pull for it, don't feel bad. I think they are still solid Lightcones, but they are just better ways of pulling money. Maybe you got it lucky, you got it in 10 pull, 20 pull. Don't feel bad about that. It's like, I would want that any day too. So increase wearer's energy restoration by 12%. When an ally uses their ult, wearer restores HP for an ally currently with the lowest HP by a bit. So you heal a little bit more. And when the wearer provides healing for an ally, increase the healed ally's attack by 2.4. Stacks up to 5 times. So it's basically like a 12% attack buff, heal a little bit, and energy restoration. This is $100. Would you want this $100 or would you want this post-op conversation at S5? It gives you basically the same thing in terms of energy regeneration rate. The 12% attack, you just slap on the 2-piece Lightcone on your healer, and probably you will get that 12 piece already. And save yourself $100, buy yourself something nice or something. So I think this is like 1.5, maybe slightly better than Luocha because at least it's energy regen, but still absolutely trash. I wouldn't get abundance for the most part at least. But shoot me if you want. That's just my honest personal bias. I just like to be as honest as I can. Instead of going for preservation, let's go on to something else. Let's do the hunt. It used to be one of the god tier ones, now it's dog shit. But yeah, one reason why it's dog shit is because cruising in the Stalency is a very good base, and hunt characters are not meta, so 2 reasons why it's not as good. Didn't really go very well. Of course, in the long term, we could obviously see a change if it's suddenly like some stonks. There's a new one big boss enemy that requires Hunt to do DPS. Maybe Hunt will come back in the game. But for now, this is very strong. You get a 16% crit rate, is free, is a free Lightcone, and you probably don't play too many Hunt characters nowadays, that this one is going to just be slapped on your only Hunt character, Doctor ratio probably, and it's good enough. You gain a bit more crit rate when enemies are less than 50%, but I don't think this extra 16% is a huge game breaker. Maybe just a bit more consistency, because you're probably running like 60 at the base. With 16 more, you get 76. The last 16 probably is just pushing it close to 100%. At least that's my thoughts. You defeat an enemy, which Hunt characters do quite a bit if they attack a squishy. You gain more attack, massive amounts of attack, 40%. So very strong Lightcone already. And let's just compare that to the tree over here, Lightcones. Tree with like Doctor ratio included, not Yansing here. So In the Night, in my opinion, out of all of them, In the Night is probably the best. I think that In the Night is very, very strong. As a Lightcone, I'm not talking about Seele herself. Of course, Seele uses it to her full potential, but the reason for that is this is a very easy Lightcone to proc the entire effect. Crit rate 18% at this base is already better than cruising the Stellar Sea, which is not much of a thing to brag about. At least you're better than the free Lightcone. But what is really impressive about this is this next part here, where you have damage increase when a wearer uses basic attack or skill. Basically anyone damages with basic attack or skill, unless it's like all full-out attacks that don't count as basic attack or skill. And also the crit damage of the ultimate is increased. So everything gets buffed, and all you need is speed that passes 100. Out of all of the characters in the game, the only character that doesn't have too much speed buffing in him, and you guys guessed it, in the Hunt characters, that is the slowest out of all of them, is Doctor ratio. If I am not wrong, he has nothing that buffs speed in his entire kit. So this is the only Hunt character that has, I just want to make sure that I'm not talking out of my ass or anything, but yeah, this is the only Hunt character that has no sort of percentage speed buffing. Does he even get flat speed? He doesn't even get flat speed, so he's freaking slow. Every other Hunt character has some sort of speed buffing in them, so he probably will benefit the least from Seele's Lightcone out of all of them. But other than that, for Hunt characters, speed is actually very, very easy to get, which means that you can hit this very, very easily. Especially if you just slap on one S-star, you get 50, 60 speed right there. Yeah, straight away you get the max buff from one character, and you can still run a full attack gear as well. Nowadays, there's so many characters that buff speed, right? You have almost any single newer character nowadays, you throw a stone, 1 out of 3 will have some sort of speed buffing to get you closer to that limit. So I think In the Night is very strong. In my opinion, it's probably like same as Yuan, probably a 4 out of 5. That's why they release both of them first, so to like extract the value out of you with good Lightcones in the game, which is nice to see. At least they don't get power crap, even though they were first Lightcone being released. 4.5 out of 5 for Seele's Lightcone. For this Worrisome Blissful, this is Topaz and Numby's Lightcone. The reason why I don't think this is super good, even though it pretty much has the same thing as Seele's one, you have 18% crit, and a very good thing for herself, for Topaz herself. Follow-up damage is 30%, which is similar to how Jing Yuan's Lightcone is. After the wearer uses a follow-up attack, it stacks up to 2 stacks. When ally hits the target under the tame state, the crit damage increases by 12%. It's like a half DPS Lightcone, half support Lightcone, which is good for Topaz and Numby. But I wouldn't say that this is like $100 worth, given that Topaz and Numby is really like playing in the mid category of like a sub DPS supporting kind of role, which she still gives a lot of value for very little dollar spent. So you want to actually like invest more in the characters that need the money, and the characters that don't really need the resources, you actually want to just let them swing with like as little as you can. That way you can allocate your resources more efficiently generally. I use my Topaz with Return to Darkness, which I think is very, very underrated as a Lightcone for a lot of people. And I just want to like promote this. I don't have commission from selling you this Lightcone. But hear me out. This is, I think, a pretty strong one. No one has it at S5, but if you land a crit hit, most Hunt characters have quite high crit hits, and they attack many times. You can dispel a buff on the enemy. If you like Luocha, if you like Pala's dispelling ability, this freaking thing turns your Hunt character like Topaz and Numby, who's a supportive role, into a debuffer, a stripper. That sounded weird. But yeah, Topaz could be a stripper as well if you use Return to Darkness and just remove all the buff from the enemies too. Just saying, I think Worrisome Blissful probably is like a 2.5 to 5. It's mid. It's not very great. Not many Hunt characters can use it. Maybe for Doctor Ratio and her. But not worth spending the $100 in my opinion. I always think like, is $100 worth it kind of thing. Baptism of Pure Thought. This is of course not the free Doctor Ratio. We got him for free, so a lot of people are probably considering, is the Lightcone worth it? It's very strong because it gives you crit damage. Not many Lightcones give you crit damage. For a Yenting player, you will understand how it feels like if any of you actually play him in the early days. Crit damage is quite important, especially if your characters are capping on crit rate. For every debuff the enemy has, the wearer's crit damage deals additional damage up 8%, stacking up 3 times. This is at 24%, so you get a total of like 44% crit damage buffing. Massive. When using ultimate to attack the enemy, wearer receives this effect buff which increases their damage by 36% and ignore. This is in my opinion, is a very, very strong Lightcone. I think for Doctor Ratio, this increases his damage massively. No other Lightcone comes very close, especially if you think Doctor Ratio is a character that could potentially easily get crit rate from a lot of sources as well. So I think that this is probably going to rank on par with Seele for Doctor Ratio. I must say, like, because Doctor Ratio is free, everyone has him, which is why a lot of people probably will be considering this Lightcone. His E0 is not as, his E1 is not as attractive at Baptism of Pure Thought in my opinion. I would go for this. It gives him a lot. It does a lot. I think this is very, very strong. 4.5 as well, one of the higher ratings. So to summarize, like this whole category here of Hunt class, I think it's very, very strong, just that the class as a whole is not very attractive right now. If you're an investor for the long term, you believe that one day Hunt characters will come back in, invest in good ones, like Baptism of Pure Thought is pretty decent, In the Night is pretty decent as well. The 4 stars are okay, they're not too great, but Cruising the Stellar Sea is just very competitive for a not so great meta for Hunt right now. I think the $100 could be much better placed elsewhere. There's always going to be a rerun somewhere. And yeah, just wait for the rerun. Don't like take a risk unnecessarily. That's my honest opinion. I'll leave Destruction for last, probably the most exciting. Let's go for Preservation first, which is unfortunately a little bit more boring. Not for the characters though, the characters are very, very strong, Fuxuan at least. So this is the only category I think that has one limited 5-star. Everyone else has 2 already, right? So 1, 2, we have 1, 2, 3 here, we have 1, 2 now, 1, 2. I'm just counting by the Lightcones, then you can count the number of limiteds. You have 3 here, Destruction also has like 3. So yeah, Preservation currently, without upcoming Adventuring, is the only class right now that only has 1. So I'm going to make it quick, it's not going to be a long one. We are all excited for Destruction. How do I think this Lightcone is? She already shut her eyes. Most of you realize that I really love Fuxuan. I talked about her a lot. I said that she was the only character I think was overpowered in my 10-20 years of playing a game. I still think she is very, very strong, and you guys seen the stats already. I didn't pull for this, even though I thought that she was super good, super versatile. And let me give you the reasons why. This increases max HP. Yes, it helps you get to that maybe 9k threshold, 10k threshold, whatever that is, a little bit more. Gives you energy regeneration rate of 12%, which is nice stats. They are all useful stats. They are best in slot for Fuxuan. Yes, when the wearer's HP is reduced, all allies deal increased damage, so it buffs your team damage. Theoretically, it does everything. You give her the stats she needs, she has her outback faster, she has like increased damage that she deals, and also at the same time, the amount of HP she restores at the start of every wave, you like heal the whole party up, solo, sustain and everything. The problem I think about this Lightcone is generally the team comps that she plays in doesn't really care about this like every wave heal. They just need that a little bit of sustain and they already clear off the enemies very, very quickly. So $100 for this, it's very difficult to justify considering that her E1 is a 30% crit damage buff to the whole team. Would you rather more sustain or beating your enemy up a lot faster? 30% probably will help you one-shot enemies before they even get close to dying. So in the end, you don't even use a lot of these stats that you get. So I guess the real competition for Fuxuan's Lightcone is E1 or S1. And in my opinion, because of how versatile Fuxuan is, it makes this Lightcone a lot less attractive because not many characters really do care about this. You turn any like healing character, defensive character into a healer, yes, but strong, but I just don't think it's very worth it. You have good ones like Landor's Choice. It's already super strong. You reduce the damage that she takes. She takes a truckload of damage. So this is even better for a character that is like soaking a lot of massive damage at one go. So I think Landor's Choice is like super huge value. I'm like tripping on my words here, but super good value for it. Texture of Memories, I don't really like it. I don't think it's like super good for her. Just use Landor's Choice. But yeah, that's my thoughts. I think this, if I were to give you a rating on its own, if you're talking about pure stats wise, logically speaking, you will want to give this a 3.5. But for me, I think the competition is with her E1. I don't think it's like super good. I'll probably rate this, my personal bias, a 2 out of 5. I just don't see the necessary stats that I need for a character like Fuxuan who's already so overpowered. She's a great character, just have E0, S0 by the way, if you guys are wondering. Don't think it's like super necessary. The last category, the most fun one also. As you can see, this is the category guy I got the most Lightcones out of all of them. So there are 3 characters, I got 2 out of 3, which is something, I guess. And this is a category where all the characters are pretty meta. So this is going to be a fun one. Who should I start off with? Let's start off with the least, I wouldn't want to say least attractive or least flashy nowadays, but a humble character like Blade. Not going to be the most flashiest DPS, but he's a stable beat stick out of all of them. The thing about Blade is he has pretty strict requirements. He saps his own life, he does a bit of damage, so he does benefit from a lot of Lightcones, for example like Secret Vow when he's playing on very, very low life. And this is like one of his strongest Lightcones. We compared it as well. So a Secret Vow, if you have it at high in super impositions, you don't really need his signature. It's very competitive. But the thing that this one gives is not only does he give you like this crit rate, which is very nice for Blade, he also increases like max HP a little bit, so he gives even more stats, which he then turns into damage. Unlike Fuxuan, it doesn't really translate to damage, but Blade uses it, and he uses the 5-star stat scaling. So for DPS Lightcones, it matters a bit more because they use not only the HP, the attack, but for destruction characters even more, they use all 3 because they are like pseudo tanks. So in my opinion, like the class of Lightcones that are the best investment are destruction, because they use every single main stat as well as the sub stat. They use all of it because they draw a lot of aggro to themselves as well, and that's the true reason why destruction Lightcones are at a slight advantage, and also the reason why I fork out a bit of money, my own resources, to get these as well. So that huge like overview aside, this is decent. When the wearer is attacked or consumes their own HP, damage is increased by 24%. So I pulled this because I want the stats, and everything else is like decent enough for him. Do you need this? I think that Secret Vow is good enough, but he might be a bit squishier. I like my Blade to be a bit chunkier. He runs at like 7.8 to 8k HP, so very, very chunky. But I'll probably rate this as like a mid-tier, 2.5 out of 5. It gives him everything he needs. You don't really need it because Blade is very, very versatile on its own. You can pretty much do with a lot of other stuff. Except, I don't think this is like super good on him, but it still gives him that 5-star stats. So if you're just looking for 5-star stats, this Something Irreplaceable is decent because he does get hit quite a bit anyway, and at least he heals up a little bit also when he does get hit, and damage increase after he gets hit. So decent options for Blade. So Blade is probably the one that needs his Lightcone the least. The ones that need their Lightcones a lot are the 2 characters. Let's start off with Imbibitor Lunae, and we'll save Jing Liu for last. Imbibitor Lunae loves his Lightcone, of course, because it gives him a lot of stats. When the wearer uses their basic attack, they will get 1 stack of Dragon's Core lasting for 2 turns, which he pretty much always does if he wants to get uptime. Each stack of Dragon's Core increases the wearer's attack by 18% and energy regeneration rate by 6%, which is everything Imbibitor Lunae needs. This is a character, Imbibitor Lunae, that requires a tremendous amount of stats to really pop off, to see a lot of value. He is a hyper investment character. If you want to go all out for him, you will see the biggest gains for Imbibitor Lunae out of a lot of the other DPSs in the game, because he requires a lot of stats, but not only that, he also pays off very well with investment out of the other current DPS in the game. Jing Liu is like slightly lower investment. You can get by with lower investments because she takes like the stats from other characters as well. Doesn't need too much of supportive ability, but Imbibitor Lunae is, in my opinion, one of the major hyper carries, probably for a really, really long time also. And he does a lot with it, so it's not as if it's like wasted. So I would say Brighter Than the Sun is also like 4.4 out of 5. I think it's very difficult to get so much stats for a character like Imbibitor Lunae who needs it a lot. And if you don't, let's say you don't use, for example, Imbibitor Lunae on this Lightcone, crit rate generally quite versatile. Not many destruction Lightcones have this crit rate. That's why sometimes I put Blade's Lightcone here just to get that crit stat, because I don't have very good crit rate gear. My luck is like atrocious. When the wearer uses like basic attack, they gain stacks. So most characters also gives like stacks, and anyone can use additional energy restoration. Anyone can use attack increase, which is decent enough, very versatile. For that, and because HP is like only main for Blade, in that case I would like rank Brighter Than the Sun like 3 out of 5 for versatility. But for Imbibitor Lunae himself, I think he deserves like a 4 out of 5. Definitely a very, very good pickup. I didn't pick this up. Why? In case some of you are wondering, even though I speak so highly of destruction Lightcones, I don't play Imbibitor Lunae a lot. I prefer characters that are much more versatile. I'm not really a hyper carry kind of player. I just like to mix and match my characters because my account generally is more lengthier or like across the breadth rather than going down into depth and getting like super investment into one character. We talked about whether going for many characters or like doubling down to one like hyper carry DPS is better in another video also. Check it out on channel if you're interested. And if you're finding value in this video so far, before we go into the last one, which I think you will enjoy, like and subscribe for more such future videos. We talk a lot about these very broad concepts already. And leave me in comments what else you want to see too. And let's get on with the final and last one for today. I shall be my own sword. This is a fun one. Jing is very strong, and this is a light cone that makes her even stronger. I think that this is a ridiculously strong light cone. Why? It's crit damage, nice. You give her that 20% crit damage, but she uses these abilities and these abilities so well. When an ally gets attacked or loses a HP, gain 1 stack of Eclipse, and up to 3 stacks. Sorry for that breath. But each stack of Eclipse increases the damage of the wearer's next attack by 14%. This is 42% at max stacks, which Jing gets with every attack, enhanced attack at least. And when 3 stacks are reached, she is able to ignore 12% defense. You have a 12% defense ignore, you have a 42% damage increase, and you have a 20% crit damage. On top of that, you have stats of HP, attack, and defense, all of it a signature character like Jing really scales very well with. She does take some damage here and there. Very, very strong. And she scales off with the HP that she saps as well for her teammates. So she's going to be sapping a lot of HP and she gets this stack so fast. I think this is very strong. Where can you find 12% crit, defense ignore, and 42% in any of these other light cones? I don't even think any of them has that in the game. Let me just double check. Yeah, none of them has that. The Secret Vow is probably the one that can get close if you are very conditionally always lower than the enemy, but it's unlikely also because not everyone has HP sapping mechanics. But yeah, that is my thoughts. I think Jing Liu's one is probably a 4.5 out of 5 as well. And that is my honest opinions of all these light cones. Jing Liu is a character that you want to... generally, DPS characters are characters that you want to go for their light cones first rather than the Eidolons because you get so much out of the main stat and how much better they are than their counterparts. So if you realize, I tend to pull my signature light cones first for DPS characters. Most DPS characters will appreciate it, and you can just like take a chill pill on your preservation, take a chill pill on your abundance light cones. Harmony characters, yeah, you can chill pill as well. Not very important, but Hunt, Erudition, Destruction, all these 3 are worth considering, and we talked about all of them already. Nihility is the wild card here that you can find really good ones as well if you keep your eyes open. And yeah, stay tuned to the channel and see you in the next video.